All right. Greetings, everyone. My name is Dallas Dominguez. I am a electrical engineering student at the University of California, San Diego. Today, I want to dive into a subject close to my heart as it's been something I've been experiencing during my time at this school. So let's get right into it. So the synopsis is that we will discuss the ways in which the pandemic has changed the face of education in America. If you look here, you'll see Center Hall. This is where I used to go for my EC35 Circuit Fundamentals course. The class was 3 days a week in-person lecture. So you can imagine when COVID rolled around, I was slightly happy. So we're first going to talk about what the authors say. So I've read a couple readings and I found some interesting ideas I want to introduce. Let's start here. So COVID-19 has undoubtedly created many disadvantages to our society. Sectors such as the job market, the fitness and health market, the entertainment industry, etc., all took major hits during the pandemic. It almost seems criminal to entertain the thought that COVID-19 actually created advantages in other sectors. But we're witnessing new ideas emerge that could have only resulted from a worldwide event of this magnitude. Namely, in the education sector, we have seen drastic changes in all aspects of a student's typical school life. Before we begin our exploration into this idea, it's important to first dive into some ideas I've come across from different authors concerning the current structure of education in America. So chapter 12, Learning to Race with Machines, Recommendations for Individuals in the Second Machine Age by Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee, introduces us to the idea that students in this day and age can best prepare themselves for the future by actively practicing practical skills that they will use in the future. This chapter attempts to tackle the larger issue of automation and in the future leading to lots of jobs being replaced, a similar sort of forced adaptation to a large event as we have seen from the pandemic. Brynjolfsson and McAfee's fundamental recommendation to students and parents in learning to live in this newly forced digital world is to study hard, using technology and all other available resources to fill up your toolkit and acquire skills and abilities that will be needed in the second machine age. And they discuss this concept of ideation, this ability to apply creativity to make meaningful and significant technology or art. They discuss that it's important to exercise this ability frequently as you progress through your education. This ability is not easily replaced by any sort of machine, as machines think logically, and this taps into a more abstract portion of the human brain. We need to point our focus to this notion that although machines can be very good at one thing, they're often not cross-disciplinary. The authors talked about the case when IBM Watson completely dominated human professionals Brad Rutter and Ken Jennings in the 2011 episode of Jeopardy! And as silly as it sounds, you would never think to see if IBM Watson can also perform heart surgery. My takeaway from Brynjolfsson and McAfee's ideas is that the ability to adapt to a world-changing event like the coming machine age or the pandemic and train the skill of creation and ideation is how the authors see us thriving moving forward. So we're going to jump now to another idea introduced by British author Ken Robinson in chapter 6, What's Worth Knowing, Creative Schools, about the grassroots revolution that's transforming education. So he dives into the purpose of using and creating a true curriculum for an education system. It's a tough task, but one would need to categorize what subjects fall under informal or formal curriculum based on whether it is a fundamental subject like mathematics or grammar, and optional subjects such as higher technology or science courses, or voluntary such as physical education activities and extracurriculars. The structure of these three subject types is the foundation to provide a map of what students are meant to learn, quote. He goes on to explain that modern curriculums are structured the way they are for historical reasons, but more importantly for financial reasons. Robinson states that schools need a curriculum so they can work out how to use their resources and how to arrange everyone's use of time and space, when it should be the curriculum that shapes the schedule. My takeaway from Robinson's idea was that students would be more enthusiastic about education if it was structured in a way that benefits them. Then it's a win-win situation for both parties. All right, so another idea I want to introduce is a bit out of bounds, but most certainly ties back to the ideas of figuring out an effective response to world-changing events. Climate change is having a large impact on the way we go about energy, industry, even the economy, as we attempt to mitigate the damage that rapid industrialization has done. Public opinion of the climate crisis is not treated as a priority issue on the checklist of things that society cares about, but it's most certainly an emergency. And by the Green New Deal, Klein in chapter epilogue, the capsule case for a Green New Deal in the book On Fire, the burning case for a Green New Deal, says that treating an emergency like an emergency means all of our energies can go into action rather than into screaming about the need for action. Okay, which is what's happening now. Rapid, tactical, and precise responses are what's required when it comes to properly handling events that can have serious impacts on the future. Now we see in the book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari in the chapter titled Disillusionment that another phenomenon we are facing in the future is AI getting more sophisticated, which will lead to creation of classes of humans, superhumans who are augmented by technology. There's going to be humans, superhumans, artificial intelligence, all coexisting in society, and he makes it clear that humankind won't abandon the liberal story of providing for people's basic needs, social status, and self-worth, despite the societal system changing so rapidly as artificial intelligence continues to develop. So I introduced these ideas with the intent of showing some of these new out-of-the-box response tactics to get you on the same page as me as we shape this new idea that innovation and prosperity can come from the harshest of situations. Namely, we can create new, streamlined, and efficient methods of education as we continue to progress through all the rapid changes we have made during the pandemic. This takes us into our philosophical no man's land. So this is the gap. We see repeated phenomena in the readings that good things can result from harsh events. So we have to ask ourselves, did this worldwide pandemic have any positive impacts? It almost seems criminal to entertain the thought that COVID-19 actually created improvements in the education system, but we're witnessing new ideas emerge that could have only resulted from a worldwide event of this magnitude. We're seeing students able to access a far greater pool of resources now that most operations have gone digital. And we're seeing complete reform of curriculum in the American education system. All of the ideas from the authors serve as excellent tools for a blueprint on effective education. And we've seen these ideas tactically deployed in education as a defensive response to the pandemic. Now, I'd like to interject here with some personal experiences, and I want to end with this. This is just a story of what I went through. So we've seen commendable efforts from educators to rapidly modernize education and foster curriculum now centered around what Robinson defines as creativity and criticism. So in terms of creativity, we've seen that educators are now cultivating creativity more seriously and with a greater sense of purpose, as Robinson puts it, especially as the pandemic presents complex challenges for students. So in fall quarter 2020, while the pandemic sanctioned shutdowns were in full swing, I took a course in circuit design and components with an intelligent and trailblazing professor who employed a newly structured curriculum known as the flipped classroom method as a way to actively test new teaching strategies amidst the pandemic. This method involved much more responsibility on the part of the student, but also allowed the student much greater autonomy on how and when they choose to study. Lectures were recorded and posted online so you could access them anytime, anywhere, and watch them at your own pace. And constructive criticism was actually encouraged through constant surveys and forums in order to check on the performance of this new class model. So the students for the first time had a voice in what they liked and disliked. and could even vote on what they wanted to study. The exams were given as 24-hour time windows where a few custom circuit design questions were given by the professor. The test was open book, which allowed students to focus more on studying the higher level design mindset rather than a memorization approach. The tests were monstrous. I'll give my professor that. But now you can rest in between questions. You could go get a snack, some water, and come back fresh each time. It was a different testing experience altogether and felt far more like how it should be. Students are learning new and modern ways to be resourceful now during the pandemic under all this pressure, and this has sparked the end for traditional teaching methods because they're learning practical career skills, just like Brynjolfsson and McAfee stated. We've seen this boost in project-based learning. Uh, sorry, I want to slide it in. So we've seen this boost in project-based learning and examination from the pandemic, helping to foster a greater sense of creativity, as we discussed from the ideas introduced by Robinson. We will end our conversation here after that success story of the flipped classroom method, and I ask educators listening to this to please continue this reformation and experimentation phase that you're going through for the sake of achieving high-quality education. With this, we can truly bring to fruition the common idea that we saw from all the authors, that good consequences can come from bad situations. So thank you for listening to my short little dive into some future thinking philosophy, and I hope that this idea truly sits with those who have an open mind and love to put their ideas to action. Thank you very much. Goodbye.